So, yeah, I am Dan Stormont with the Water Committee, just in case nobody doesn't know who I am, but you all do. So that's fine. Let me go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to go, instead of having a slide presentation, I'm actually going to go through just some of the live sites so you can see where I'm getting the data from. And that way, if you want to look it up later, you should be able to find the sources I'm using. So hopefully that'll be helpful. Um, Starting off, this is the Central Arizona Project website. There's a lot of actually very interesting information on there. If you're ever wondering, for example, how much electricity they buy from the spot market and all that stuff, it's on there. If you want to know how much water they delivered to Tucson and all the other customers in Arizona, it's on there as well. And of course, they have this dashboard, which is something that I refer to quite frequently. It shows graphically what the current Colorado River conditions are, and it gets updated monthly. So it's not, truly real time, but it does get updated every month. So you have a pretty good idea of where things stand month by month. And so as of the beginning of May, you can see it was updated on May 3rd, 2026. They said the system contents. And so the system contents here are all of these reservoirs that they've got on the Colorado River, um, is 20.64 million acre feet. And so acre feet, of course, is the measure that water managers use, because when you're talking gallons for the quantities of water that water managers deal with, it just gets to be really stupid huge numbers. And so they use acre feet instead. And million acre feet, that's a lot of water. And so there was 20.64 million acre feet as of May 3rd. Last year it was 23.42 million acre feet. So about 3 million acre feet less than we had last year at this time. And you can also see how that's distributed. You see some of the smaller reservoirs, and these are the size of the cups do actually represent the size of the reservoirs. So the two big ones, of course, are the ones you hear about all the time: Lake Mead and Lake Powell. And Lake Powell also is the dividing line between the upper basin states and the lower basin states. And so that's kind of, Lake Powell is sort of the last stop for water that's coming out of the upper basin. And Lake Mead, as you're all aware, is how the Central Arizona Project water is allocated. So that's where they make the determinations of how much water California gets, how much water Nevada gets, how much water Arizona gets, and how much water ultimately Mexico gets. Those are all decided based on that Lake Mead level. But the Lake Powell level is, of course, really important too, because that is the holding area for the upper basin. And also, as you've heard in the news lately, one of the issues with Lake Powell right now is that it's getting so low. The way that it's designed, it actually has to have a fairly substantial quantity of water in it to be able to continue generating hydroelectricity. And so um, it's been pretty low, and they've had to do a little balancing. In fact, I don't think this update here shows the release they did from Flaming Gorge Reservoir, which is up in the by the border of Utah and Wyoming. They released some water from that to run down into Lake Powell to help to make sure it had enough water in Lake Powell to be able to continue generating electricity. So things are not great. And of course, there are some other issues too, we'll talk about in 1 minute. You can see that for the most part, most of the reservoirs are down some percentage. And the other thing that's rather scary is this is the snow accumulation chart. And you can see that as of May, this is where it is. The purple line here is the median value for the last 30 years. And the value here was last year, 2025, and this is this year. So yeah, we're in trouble as far as water goes in the Colorado River, which is not a surprise to much of anyone. And this one chart here as well, this is the unregulated inflow to Lake Powell. So basically that means that's the amount of water that's getting to Lake Powell that isn't being stopped in one of the other reservoirs upstream. And you can see they have three values here. There's the optimistic one, the most likely, and the most pessimistic. And the most likely and pessimistic are pretty close together, and it's well below the average. So, not a surprise. Things are not looking good on the Colorado River.
Dan,
Yeah,
can we have questions as we're going along?
sure. Yeah, please do.
Can you go back to the previous picture you were showing?
Yep. Give me 1 second. Yeah, there we go.
So I'm looking at that chart where you've got the capacity of various reservoirs. And so the
Right.
blue shows that's the current amount.
Yep.
And then
Yeah.
above that is that. So like up the top one is at 47% of its capacity.
Yeah.
I'm interested that there are three in the upper basin. Well, there's actually
There's,
four in the upper basin that are above 50% of capacity.
yeah.
And whereas Lake Mead is doesn't is at 31%. So essentially, they're holding on to a whole lot of water.
They are, it's not a lot of water, but yes, they are holding on to. So, for example, this is like the last stop before water leaves Colorado. And so Colorado is like, well, we're going to hold water in these two reservoirs that
Mm-hmm.
are along the river. And then also you see the Blue Mesa Reservoir has actually been dropping, so it's below 50%. But
Mm-hmm.
these other two are pretty full, and that's one of the issues as the negotiations have been going on, and that's what I'm going to go on to next is the negotiations between the upper basin states and the lower basin states. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
the upper basin states, they are the producers. That's where most of the snowfall is at. That's where that water that runs down the Colorado River comes from. And then the lower basin states are mostly the consumers of the Colorado River water. And
Mm-hmm.
so the upper basin states are, kind of understandably, it's like the water starts out here. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're going to keep our water in our state, and we're not going to allow as much to flow down to the lower basin. And there are actually each of the basins were promised by the compact for the Colorado River Compact were promised 7.5 million acre feet of water. The problem is there isn't that much water in a typical year now. And so that's one of the problems is they're like saying, well, we're going to keep our 7.5 million because that's what the compact says. And then
Mm-hmm.
the lower basin saying, well, you have to give us some more of that because that's not going to be enough for us. And so that's why we haven't been able to reach an agreement. And that's, there have been a bunch of different plans that have been proposed. None of them have really been acceptable either to the other negotiating parties or to the federal government. The Colorado River itself is managed by the Bureau of Reclamation. So now that all of these states can't agree on what to do with the water and how to share it equitably, the Bureau of Reclamation is going to step in. And this is, I'm not going to go into a lot of depth. There's a lot of stuff here, and it's kind of confusing, to be honest. But if you wanted to see what the current options are for the management of the Colorado River, if the states can't agree and the states can't agree. So, one of these options is what's probably going to be put into effect later this year. And this is their draft environmental impact statement. This is basically the last document before they put one of these plans in place. I will point out there are a few things here. The main body of this report um, has, why they have to manage the Colorado River, the description of alternatives, and that's the part that's really interesting to us because that's where they show how that water is going to be divvied up between the various states, and then some other things like what the environmental consequences would be of the various decisions they might make, the consultation process, and then a whole bunch of supporting appendices and technical appendices. So if you really want to look at how they did the calculations as they put these things together and how they determine the impact on fish and aquatic resources, for example, or impact on vegetation or impact on terrestrial wildlife, all of that is in these various appendices. But for right now, I'm just going to look at chapter 2 because that's the one that's interesting. Um, and that has the various alternatives that they're considering. And so when you go through the environmental impact process, normally you have a no action alternative. Basically, that means we're not going to do anything and this is what's going to happen. That of course will not be implemented, but that they have to look at that as part of the process. Then they also have a basic coordination alternative, an enhanced coordination alternative. Um, the Bureau is kind of leaning towards this maximum operational flexibility alternative, which essentially just says we want to keep the levels in both Lake Powell and Lake Mead close to equally balanced so that neither one of them has trouble generating electricity. That's their primary concern with those two. And so that's the one that they're kind of leaning to. There is also the supply driven alternative, which, basically they're going to look at the snow year for a particular year, and then they're going to determine what that gets divvied up based on that rather than the current compact, which says 7.5 million for one half, 7.5 million for the other, and doesn't consider any of that supply. But the one you probably heard about in the news, and I'm just going to kind of scroll down here a little bit, try to find the right spot. Um, the no action alternative. This is, you've probably heard that Arizona is going to take a more than 75% hit in Colorado River water if they can't reach an agreement. It comes from this alternative, which will never be implemented. It's just one they have to look at. And also the basic agreement alternative. So that's this one here. In both of these, Arizona takes a 77% reduction in Colorado River water, which for the most part means that Tucson is not going to get any significant tap water because a lot of that's going to be going to our neighbors to the north, and we're not going to get that much of it getting down to us. And also, there are some treaty rights that the Thanatham Nation has to some of that water, and they have priority over Tucson. Now, of course, we know how things have worked out historically. Just because there's a treaty doesn't mean the government's going to honor it. But right now, they would have higher priority than Tucson would. And so that's why we're talking about, worst case is we basically have no cap water or very little cap water getting to Tucson. The probably more likely one is one of these other alternatives where it's about a 30% reduction. And California, you noticed in this one up here, the basic, because Arizona has junior water rights, we take a big hit. California basically takes no hit. They get their full allocation. And then Nevada and Mexico both have reductions as well. And the main reason for that is that Arizona has been one of the has always had junior rights because we were late to the party. And so we don't get first dibs on the water. The This one, which is one that maybe in that, like I said, the others are kind of variations on this one. The enhanced coordination would be a division of everybody takes some loss. California would take almost 50% reduction. Arizona would take 30%. Mexico keeps getting the same amount. You notice they keep getting like almost 17% cut. This one might happen. California has been somewhat receptive to it, although I don't think they are happy with the 48%. But they have said, yeah, we can take a reduction in our allocation. So we're probably somewhere between this 30% number and that 75% number. So that's kind of what we're looking at. And the final decision hasn't been made. That won't be made until later this year, probably just after the beginning of the fiscal year for the federal government. So, I mean, it should be in October. In reality, it'll probably be like November before they announce which one of these options are going to go into play. But if you're curious what they're looking at, this is the place to look at it.
So
Also,
Dan,
yeah, go ahead.
what does percentage of total shortage mean?
So that means that dividing up this shortage of the water that we're getting any particular year. So um, right now we have this tiered reduction system. So we have let me go back to this cap chart real quick. Um, we have a drought contingency plan that's based on tier 1, tier 2, tier 2A shortages, and tier 3 shortages. And each one of them mean various customers lose water based on a priority scheme. We're in a tier 1 shortage right now. As you can see with what's happening with the snow year and everything, we are almost certainly going into a tier 2 shortage, if not a tier 2A shortage, which is one step past the tier 2 shortage. And so it will mean taking reductions in the amount of water that's available to the customers that are south of Lake Mead, which basically is the All America Canal for California, the Central Arizona Project Canal for California, and Central Arizona Project for Arizona. So those are two of the two of the states. I can't talk tonight. Sorry about that. Two of the states that are going to be impacted by going to a tier 2 reduction. So you can see there's a lot of moving pieces with it. I mean, all of these things, like the plans are based on what the reduction is. If we had an outstanding snow year for multiple years in a row, nobody would be talking about this because they wouldn't be doing the cuts. But what they're saying is when we have to go into these shortages, because you guys couldn't agree on a new contingency plan to divide this up equitably, we're going to step in with our plans. And so we're going to say this is how much each state is going to take of a shortage based on the amount of water that's going to be available coming out of Lake Mead, which is the one that really matters for California water allocation and Arizona water allocation. Um, as you might guess, Nevada actually takes their water out of Lake, well, they take theirs out of Lake Mead as well. Um, and then some of the Arizona water, like New Mexico, gets their allocation out of Lake Powell, and some of Arizona gets their allocation out of Lake Powell as well. So there is parts of the states get that from Lake Powell, but it's mostly Lake Mead is where the decision is made as far downstream from there.
So still trying to understand, if we get 31% of the total reductions, that means that the total reductions is some amount of the total that should be going into the lower basin, and
Yeah,
31.
it's based on how much water is going to be released from Lake Mead for customers downstream. So that's really what that is based on. And you can see, for example, in this particular one, and these numbers vary a little bit depending on which one of the options you look at. But so, for example, um, you see here, like when the sum of Lake Powell shortage and Lake Mead shortage is equal to 60% or less of the combined capacity, um, and between 60% and 30% of combined capacity, the shortage volume that's imposed for that year would be 1.3 million acre feet to 3 million acre feet. And then if it's more than that, then it's going to be a shortage volume of 3 million acre feet. Remember that we are supposed to get 7.5 million acre feet. And so those percentages are based on how much they're reducing. Are they reducing 3 million acre feet? Are they reducing 1.3 million acre feet? So the division is based on what that shortage is based on the current capacities of both, in this particular case, Lake Mead and Lake Powell. And as I was mentioning, the Bureau of Reclamation likes the options that balance Lake Mead and Lake Powell. So it would be this one, or option 4 does the same thing, where they always try to keep roughly the same levels, which is not happening right now. Usually Lake Mead gets more water than Lake Powell because they have Powell release water into Mead to make sure there's enough water in Lake Mead to serve all the users downstream. They're trying to say, no, we're going to hold more in Powell, which means Lake Mead is going to drop even further. And we look at both of those values to determine how much of a shortage it takes. And so like I said, the exact amount kind of varies depending on which one of the options you're looking at. So that's why I'm kind of dancing around your question a little bit, Stuart, because it really depends on the um, specific option they choose, and we don't know which one they're going to choose. And there's a lot to go into, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time trying to cover all 5 of those are really the four that matter. Like I said, the the no change option is not something that's going to happen. I mean, obviously they're going to have to change something. And there is also a graph. I'm actually not going to go into the graphical thing, but I'll show you just sort of, I'll show you briefly in case you do look at it. There's a tool that you can use that has box plots that kind of show what those water allocations mean for all these different options. It's kind of a really confusing set of tools, but if you love box plots and you want to take the time to dive in and understand what they're trying to say with these things, I certainly welcome you to look at it. It's on the same webpage as their environmental impact survey. So, oh, there's Alicia. Okay. Hi, Alicia. Sorry, we stopped. So we started a little while ago. Just talked about the current status of the Colorado River, and now I've been kind of talking a little bit about what the various options are for managing the Colorado River water if the Bureau of Reclamation makes the decision, which it seems they're going to. So that's where we're at. You didn't miss too much. And again, if anybody's interested in doing this, you can just search. It's on the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation website, and you can just search for basically, if you look for the Colorado River Basin draft environmental impact statement, you'll find this page. And it has a lot of information, more than I can go. I could spend the whole night just trying to talk about this. But a lot of good stuff there. We don't know which one of the options they're going to choose. So that's one of the important things to understand is we kind of don't know what's coming. And that's why we're seeing things from, it could be as bad as 75% of our cap allocation to it maybe 30%, which seems like the more likely scenario. But either way, there are definitely cuts coming. So that's something that I think is the key takeaway. And if you're wondering what those allocations are right now, this is from the Central Arizona Project. This is an interactive map that shows what the allocations are currently for the Central Arizona Project. So it can be kind of interesting if you want to just know, well, how much water are we getting right now? So for the city of Tucson, for example, you can see that we have an M&I priority, which means municipal and industrial. Generally, that's one of the higher priority water uses. So that's one that is less likely to be cut than agriculture, which is the lowest priority. And so we currently are getting 144,000 acre feet of Central Arizona Project water delivered to Tucson. Sometimes we don't take the entire allocation. You may have seen in the news recently, or actually it's been a little while since this happened, but there have been a few times that Tucson Water has said, we don't need the full allocation, so we will hold that water in Lake Mead, and the Bureau of Reclamation pays us for leaving that water in the lake instead of taking it. And so we've done that a few times just to try to help the situation in Lake Mead, try to help that drought situation. Um, it of course is a band-aid, but we get the 144,000 about 144,000 acre feet from the Central Arizona Project, but we usually only use about 110,000 acre feet of water. And so we have this surplus that ends up being stored out in the Avra Valley. And that's kind of why when you'll hear Tucson water managers talking about, well, we're not that worried. The reason they say that is we've been storing quite a lot of Colorado River water in the aquifer in the Avra Valley, which is where we infiltrate it before we use it. And so that's kind of, that will hold us over for a bit. But of course, if we lose a significant amount of Colorado River water for a longer period of time, we're going to start tapping into our existing, our historic groundwater instead of that banked groundwater. But there is actually physical water out in Avra Valley that has been stored, that's been surplus to our needs. And of course, I also mentioned that the Tohono Nation, mostly this allocation goes to the San Javier district. That is actually the true last stop on the Central Arizona Canal. and they have a treaty right for 27,000 acre feet. And so that treaty right they should continue to get that if there are reductions. So they'll get priority over us on that because of the federal treaty. Again, you know, does the federal government always keep treaties with the nations? Not necessarily, but uh, right now they should expect to be receiving that volume of water. And if you've been hearing what's been happening in the San Javier district, that water has been really helpful for restoring the aquifer in that region. They've actually seen the spring that is at the base of A Mountain has been starting to flow again. They've got a rebound of water in the Santa Cruz. They're seeing the groundwater levels come up just from using that allocation, mostly for the agriculture out there. But that the water that they're putting on their crops is also infiltrating into the rather shallow aquifer in that area. And so it's done some amazing things for restoring that area of Tucson. And so it would definitely be very impactful if they lost that water allocation.
Hmm.
Okay, so moving on from Colorado River water, this is a kind of an interesting dashboard that you can find if you just search for Arizona groundwater dashboard. It's a project of ASU and the Arizona Department of Water Resources. Essentially what it is, it's an interactive dashboard that you can see what's happening with with groundwater in whatever area you choose. So right now I've got it selected for our area, but you can also choose other areas in Arizona, like if you want to see Hasayampa has been one that's or actually Harquahala especially has been one that has been getting sacrificed essentially to provide groundwater to Phoenix. And
Hmm.
so you can see the number of wells they have there that they're monitoring and then what that water use has been. And so you can sort of see the number of wells over time, that well depth, and then these are also interactive. So you can click on them, or you should be able to. There you go. So you can click on the basin, and then since I clicked on a well, you can actually see what's going on with a particular monitoring well that they're using for monitoring that. So interesting thing if you're a real nerd like me and you like to dive into the maps and the hydrographs of what's happening with those wells. There is also the one that it's based on. So one of those data sources is, oh, actually, I jumped ahead of myself. Sorry. Well, we'll look at that in a minute. Um, this is the active management area dashboard. So again, this is from the Arizona Department of Water Resources, ADWR. A lot of data there, and they have this dashboard that is an interactive dashboard. Try to get, I don't know why it won't let me flip up, probably because I have it minimized. But you can select on this chart. Let's see, will let me make it bigger? Made it a little worse. We're just seeing that chart, but um, you can choose a water year and which one of the active management areas you want to look at. So right now, this is 2024 for the Tucson active management area. And this particular chart shows the amount of water demand by the sector. And again, this is one of the things that makes it really hard to compare all these different data sources because sometimes for a sector like industrial, for example, if you look at Tucson Water's numbers for the amount of water they deliver to commercial and industrial, their definition of what is commercial versus industrial is different from the ADWR's definition. And so it can get kind of confusing trying to compare apples to apples with these things. Um, in general, the industrial for ADWR is actual industrial users. And kind of bizarrely, Also turf facilities. So turf facilities are golf courses, parks, schools, all those things that have a large acreage that is being watered, that is growing turf. And so that's part of the industrial use that they have in this particular dashboard. Just a kind of an interesting take. But you can see here that in Tucson, agriculture and industrial water use are about equal. You see the Indian water use, that's water being supplied mostly to the Thanatham, although it also has some Pasquayaki water there. And then municipal, of course, is the big water user at 165,000 acre feet that's being used of the water in the active management area. That's not only the city of Tucson, that's all municipal use within the entire Tucson active management area. And so this is really, I would encourage you to like dive in just to see some of the data. I've been really surprised by some of the things that I've seen in this. Trying to, oh, there we go, back to the report. Another chart that is really interesting in here is that breakdown of water demand by the water supply. So for example, you see that in the Tucson active management area, most of the industrial water, which is 51,000 acre feet of water, which is, you know, about half of what Tucson water uses in a year, that is groundwater. And of course, not surprisingly, 40,000 of the groundwater is going to agriculture. So big water users are industrial water users outside of the city of Tucson for the most part, and agricultural, Pima County agricultural water users. Municipal, these would be pretty much all of the city areas that are not Tucson water and not getting Colorado River water. Colorado River water, the big majority of this is a lot of this is what's being delivered to Tucson. That is Colorado River water, of course. And then you see here 45K for the Indian. Again, those are water rights to the tribes that are being delivered. And a very small percentage of Colorado River water in Tucson is actually going to agriculture. And there's a little tiny bit of surface water. There are a few lakes that provide some surface water in Pima County. And then about 16,000 acre feet of municipal water. And this is largely golf courses, those kind of things. In this particular case, this is Tucson water delivery of effluent. It's about 16,000 acre feet. So we are still using a lot of groundwater, even today with the Colorado River water, which is something to think about when we think about how are we going to use water in the future. Okay, another map that I really love a lot. I'm going to close this legend so I can kind of zoom in a little bit. This is from the U.S. Geological Survey. They mostly provide data on surface water. So if you want to know how much water is flowing in the rivers in Tucson, USGS stream gauge data is where that comes from. And so that's what this map is. It kind of shows the status of those.
Dan, we're
And
still looking at the AMA.
oh, you're looking at the wrong one. Sorry. There we go. Thank you for catching that. Sometimes I forget to switch tabs. My apologies. So you can see here, these are the active stream gauges that belong to the U.S. Geological Survey in Tucson. And not surprisingly, since things are pretty dry right now, we did have that nice little storm, but any flow that was generated by that is pretty well done. So right now, there's no water flowing at the Rito Creek at La Cholla, or the Rito at Dodge, or Tanca Verde at the confluence, Pantano at Broadway. All of these stream gauges are basically not recording any flow. There is, of course, flow up here, 58.7 cubic feet a second. That's Santa Cruz River at Cortero. And anyone want to guess what that is? I'm sure probably most of you know.
It's got to be effluent.
That is effluent. Yeah. So that is the effluent that's being released by Tres Rios. That's the Sweetwater effluent. So that whole stretch that there were some news stories recently where people were saying, "Oh man, it's lost water." You know, we don't have this water that we're losing, and really we're not losing it. It's just continuing up the river for a ways out of. This is the last stop in the Tucson AMA, but that continues for a few miles up into Pinal County. So that is still water that we have. You know, that's still water that's doing something useful. Um, so, oh, actually, sorry, Trico is the last stop. I'm
Mm.
misspoke, and this is more toward
So where is
the
Cortero
last stop
then?
before it leaves. So
We lost you, Dan.
I know, I see that. I hear you. You hear me?
Yeah, you're back.
Oh, now we
Yeah, it was a momentary failure there. All right, there we go. Yeah, sorry about that. We've been having some weird stuff going on lately. Okay, so let's move on to another thing from this is going back to ADWR. Um, Interesting to understand this describes the models that ADWR actually uses to make those calculations about things like safe yield, whether we're actually meeting the goal for the Tucson active management area of using no more water than we have available being recharged. That was the goal for the AMA. We've gotten close. We haven't achieved that. And of course, we've gotten close largely because we've been importing water. So, if we lose a significant chunk of Colorado River water, which seems very likely, then it's going to be much more difficult for us to meet that safe yield goal. And we are the only AMA that's actually in that good a shape. When you look at Prescott, when you look at Phoenix, they got nowhere near to achieving their goals. So, good on us. We actually have done a pretty good job. But, we're still just barely on the edge. And any changes like the loss of Colorado River water will completely change things for the overall picture. This is what the Tucson model is based on. So that is actually the area of the active management area, and then the model itself covers an interior portion of that. Let me just jump over there really quickly. Here we go. There are data sets. Again, if you're a data nerd like I am, you can actually access the data sets that are associated with the model. You could even, I'm pretty sure that the groundwater model, the basic model itself, is an open source model. So you could even run the models yourself if you wanted to, though they are very wonky. And, it's one of those things that's not an easy thing to do. It's not like just click a button and tell me how much groundwater we have. It doesn't work that way. But there are these model reports. So the first model report was model report 13. That was when they started building up these reports of the active management areas so that they could basically the reports describe how the models are, all the bases of the models. So everything they're based on, all the assumptions they were based on. And then modeling report number 24 was the most recent update. And you see there are a number of appendices to that. The basic model is one that you'll see referred to fairly regularly because it shows some of the baseline assumptions for the groundwater management model. And one of the assumptions it has is how much mountain front recharge we have in the Tucson active management area. So there's the model boundary. And get down to that part. This is a really cool report if you're a nerd like I am, but I don't expect all of you to dive into it. But there's a lot of really good stuff in here. But what I'm trying to get to is table 1. Here we go. This steady state groundwater budget, this basically is based on the conditions in 1940. So obviously not everything is the same as in this table. So for example, stream infiltration varies wildly based on what our rain years look like. Ag recharge has changed quite a bit since this 1940s steady state. But the one thing that stayed pretty consistent is the amount of mountain front recharge we get. And what that means is that's the water that's running off largely the Catalinas, but also the Rincons, that feeds into our aquifer and recharges it. And so you can see that this steady state is about 26,000 acre feet per year for the upper Santa Cruz subbasin. So that means the Tucson Basin, and another 3,500 acre feet out in Avra Valley for a total of just a little over 30,000 acre feet a year. So that is something that has been fairly consistent over time, is that amount of mountain front recharge. The stream infiltration, and by that they mean the infiltration of waters flowing on the Pantano, the Rito, the other rivers that are getting some of that flow from the rest of the Tucson Basin and then infiltrating, that does fluctuate. And they actually talk a lot about the variance in that in this report. But again, I don't really have time to go into all of that because I know that Jana wants to talk about some of the other things too. So this is the model that ADWR bases the model that they run to see if we're achieving safe yield or not. So that's what the importance of this particular model and the report that describes it are.
Dan, I knew nothing about all of these resources, and I thank you, but I've got to sign off. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you so much for joining, Wanda, and yeah, check it out. Okay, another one, and I'm gonna try and go quicker because I know that I've been going longer than I said I was gonna go. This is the groundwater map from GWSI web. The thing that this is also from Arizona Department of Water Resources. The thing that's kind of interesting about this one is if you want to know what the status is of groundwater wells, and all of these red dots and blue dots are wells in Arizona. And as you can see, as I'm zooming in, I mean, they're all over Arizona. We have wells sunk everywhere in the state. And as I zoom into Tucson, you can see we have a lot of them. Some of them, of course, are production wells for Tucson Water. Some of them are production wells for various communities in the foothills, for example. But they are all over the place. And there are some that are kind of special. See these blue ones? Those are the index sites. So when when they calculate, when ADWR is looking at, what is the depth to groundwater, they're using these index sites. It doesn't mean that these other wells aren't being actively monitored. Some are, some aren't, but these are the ones that they're using to determine, what is the current state of the depth to water for our groundwater. And one of the things that's fun about this is if you click on one of these, you can get a hydrograph. You know me, I love these charts. And currently unavailable. Thank you, ADWR. Normally you would see the hydrograph over time of that particular well. So it would show you how much, what the depth to water was over time. And you can kind of relate that to the amount of precipitation, see how those curves match. And it'll give you a good idea of how much infiltration is happening in those sites. Let me move on to the next one really quickly. Actually, I'm going to do this really quick. This is from Sonoran Institute. They have some great reports on the health of the Santa Cruz River. And of course, the health of the Santa Cruz River is highly dependent on effluent. So these are the effluent dependent reaches. These are basically all the flows that we have, for the most part, are the result of effluent being discharged by these various treatment plants. So down south of Green Valley, that stretch is mostly from Nogales International, which is treating water on both sides of the border, and that's being released here on this lower stretch of the Santa Cruz River. And then, of course, we have the Heritage Project downtown. That's mostly getting water from Agua Nueva that is being put into this stretch of the river, as well as a little bit right next to, with the outfall right next to Agua Nueva. And then Tres Rios, which is the big one. Most of the water that is treated at Tres Rios is introduced into the Santa Cruz. And so that's why we have the Sweetwater stretch here. And that is a long established riparian environment that's just gorgeous. And that's the result of this effluent coming from Tres Rios. Like I said, almost all of their production goes to the Santa Cruz River in that point. And let's see if we can do this. There we go. And real quick, I'm not going to go into it, but if you want to see exactly how much water goes in, if you go to Pima County Wastewater Reclamation, they do an annual report. And in those reports, they say for each one of the treatment plants, you can see there's a lot of stuff here. I'm trying to get down to the treatment plants. There we go. So like, for example, Tres Rios, they show how much influent flow they had. In other words, how much sewage water made it to the treatment plant, and then how much they are distributing as effluent flow. As I was mentioning, almost all the water that goes into Tres Rios is discharged into the Santa Cruz River. So that's kind of its major function, is to distribute water to the Santa Cruz River. Agua Nueva, on the other hand, they do put some of the water into the Santa Cruz, but they also, this reclaimed water distribution, that is water that is being sold to Tucson Water. That 16,000 acre feet there is what is going to the reclaimed water system in Tucson. So all those purple pipes that are going to the golf courses and schools and parks and to the research farm of the University of Arizona, those are pretty much all coming from Agua Nueva. So just, if you want to dive into the numbers, and of course they also have information about the quality of the water that they are delivering on that. Okay, really quickly, because I do want to stop shortly. If you are not familiar with this, this is from the National Weather Service, and this is the now data portion of it. So if you go to NWS Tucson and you look for the now data, or if you look for local data and records, you'll be brought to the now data page. And the thing that's nice about this is you can choose the fidelity of the data, whether it's monthly or daily, and what kind of data you're looking at. And then you just select go, and it will show you like some charts for that. You also can get a deeper dive by actually seeing the records going back as far as they have produced that. So for example, trying to find it on here. Oh, there we go. Tucson monthly normals and extremes. You can see that they have that for the time of 1991 to 2020. You can also go and find the actual data going all the way back to 1895 monthly for precipitation, which can be really useful if you're trying to track that over time. We have talked about storm to shade. Storm to shade are the green stormwater infrastructure projects that are being run by Tucson Water. You pay a small amount on your Tucson Water bill, and that goes to this program to put in neighborhood scale projects. They usually do them either at parks or in right-of-ways along neighborhoods. And so this can give you the data on all of those projects, where they're planned, which ones are completed, which ones are under work or underway, and also which ones have been identified. And you get some more information about, where they're at in the design and implementation process, and how many projects have been done by ward. So you can see Ward 5 has had quite a few, which is not surprising. Most of them are equity centered. So those are areas that need more green infrastructure than some of the other parts of town. And Ward 1 has also had more. And again, same deal. They don't get as much tree cover as the rest of the city, which you can see actually by going to this Tucson Million Trees tab. If you are not familiar with the City of Tucson Climate Action Hub, I would highly encourage you to get familiar with it, because there's a lot of really great information on here, including the updates on how we're doing on implementation of Tucson Resilient Together. And the tree equity dashboard is let me see if I can just open that in a new tab and see if it'll load. It's being real slow. There we go. This is the map that shows the amount of tree cover throughout Tucson. So it'll show the areas that don't have many trees and the areas that have the number of trees that are the goal for the city of Tucson. And so they've goals for all of these. So you can see green is good, red is bad, orange is kind of in, or really yellow is kind of in between. Red is really bad. Or orange is not quite as bad. Yellow is kind of right in the middle. And then the ones that are doing best are the dark greens, and these lighter greens are the ones that are not bad, but they could still use a few more trees. And so definitely encourage you to dive into that. And one last thing I'm going to cover before I hand this back over to Jana to talk about planning of projects. This is from the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. This one is the PFAS tracking map. And so they have monitoring wells where they are tracking where PFAS has been or is currently being detected. The thing that's interesting to me is this map does not exactly match Tucson Water's map of where they've detected PFAS. So, Tucson Water's map shows a number of PFAS sites around Davis-Monthan, right in this area here. This one is showing a lot of PFAS along the Rito, and then of course just continuing along the riverbeds all the way up towards Marana. And so very interesting to see what ADEQ is seeing. And again, you can click on any of these dots. It will tell you what the results were, what the reading was when they last did a reading, and what the maximum level is. So in this case for PFOA, they don't want to see any more than 4.0. The reading was 16.9. For PFOS, again, it should be no more than 4.0, and the reading was 46.6. So there's some significant PFAS in this area of Ina Road right by the Santa Cruz River. So interesting thing. And again, encourage you to dive into this data as well. But with that, unless there are any final questions, I'm going to hand this back over to Jana for the rest of the meeting.
I have a question.
Yes.
So why do these areas have so much PFAS and other chemicals?
That is a very good question. Well, I mean, part of the reason is that if you follow the trail, although I don't know why there are so many right here, like around the campus farm, that is a little unusual. We know that there is PFAS coming from Davis-Monthan. We know that there is PFAS detected down here in the area of the Tucson International Airport. Here's the airport right here. A lot of any contamination that happens, you have to remember that the groundwater isn't stagnant. It's not just sitting there, but it's actually flowing underneath our feet. And the direction of flow is from the southeast down here in this area up across the basin and up to the northwest. And so wherever this is coming from, and I'm not sure if this was PFAS that has migrated from Davis-Monthan or just how it's getting to these particular wells, you will notice that they're not monitoring right here. So the part of the picture that's probably missing is we know that Tucson Water has detected PFAS in this area. And what may be happening now is that water, that contaminated water is moving up the way it does, following the path towards the rivers. And so we're seeing that starting to migrate up through the rest of the Tucson Basin.
All righty then. That's depressing. Um,
And on that note,
okay, so I guess if people want to put their cameras back on so we can see who's still around and have a discussion. So Dan, did you grab that last slide from the Renew Summit about what we wanted to work on?
I think,
Can
yeah,
we
I
see?
think I can get it really quickly. I don't have it
But,
handy. Sorry, I should have had it queued up.
Yeah, no, I'm saddle sore, and I'm not sure I can last the rest of the meeting. Literally, it's I'm not built to sit too long, but I'll do my best.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us, Stuart. And
Yeah.
yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about the projects that we wanted to work on coming out of the Renew Tucson Summit. And I understand that there should be a report coming out soon. We haven't seen it yet, but my understanding, talking to Scott just the other day, was that they're trying to finalize that report, and then everybody who was at least organizing for that should get a copy that we can then share with the people we were working with.
Yes, there was that very brief note that Scott sent out, and then the report has definitely much more. And then there are a couple of events coming up, but the dates are yet to be set. So we can't really ask you to hold a month open.
Right.
So, okay.
So it looks like Catherine left, and she won't be joining us any longer, which is a real shame because she's kind of a water nerd, and I think she's helpful for the things
Yep.
we want to work on. Dan hasn't put that. Did you find that thing, or
I'm
doesn't
looking
really
for it right now. So if you have
matter?
anything else you'd like to talk about while I'm looking for that, I'm just going
No,
back to where we did it.
and I think Wanda's gone. I guess Alicia was actually there when we went through and made our priorities. So it would probably be Stuart that I don't know. Stuart, did you look at? We sent out the last meeting, and at the end of the last meeting, we went through what we went over what we did at the Renew Summit. So
Yes.
you can probably look at that. Anyway, so I guess I won't go over that now. But Stuart,
Okay,
this
if you
is
want to hold on a second, I will share that. I think I can share that right now,
What did
so
I
we
do
at least have that to look at. So I just had to find it. I'm sorry I didn't have it queued
but
up
I'm not
already.
thinking it's really necessary right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So anyway, I just wanted to introduce Alicia to Stuart. Stuart, I don't know if you remember him from the Renew Summit, but he was one of the organizers, and he's like our go-between between the board and the water committee, as well, as he teaches the ambassadors and barn and a lot of other things. But so I think he's kind of here to check out what we're up to lately, and it sounds like he is learning some things from Dan's presentation. But I don't know, Stuart, if you want to stay around. We're working with Alicia on possibly coming up with some curriculum for real estate, when they're getting their certification. What is the name of that, Dan, again? The acronym that
CEUs,
CEUs.
continuing education units.
So that was something that Alicia had suggested during the summit as something that we could work on because she's a realtor. She meets a lot of people who are new to Tucson, and we share a concern that these new people don't don't understand our ways about conserving water and other things. And so I don't know if you remember, Stuart, that Sustainable Tucson had a hackathon that Trace worked with Shane Reisner. And one of the most popular ones was a website that I pitched. So we got like 7 people that worked on that at the time, about like teaching newcomers about, like, you know, how to acclimate to our deserts and our way of life, our lifestyle. So it was, I think it's called Desert Lifestyle Tucson. That is something I want you to put up, Dan. So
Yep. I'm trying to
so
get there.
anyway, it actually was first initiated at a Sustainable Tucson event. And me and Dan worked on it for a while with his Code for Tucson before there was a hiatus because the regional, I don't know, what did you call it? They had some kind of restructuring of the organization, so they didn't have the regional, what did they call them, Dan?
So basically, Code for Tucson was a brigade of Code for America, which was the national organization that, you know, ran all of that did a lot of things, including managing this brigade network of volunteer organizations all across the country, actually even outside of the country too. And they decided, as they were restructuring, that they were just going to focus on some of the internal grant funded projects that they'd been doing as Code for America. And so they shut down the brigade network. And so suddenly all of these brigades who had been going for, I mean, I first got involved with Code for America through the San Francisco brigade when I was in the Bay Area. So, you know, this was something that had been 15, 20 years of these brigades, and then all of a sudden they just cut us all loose. And so we had to go find our own way.
So essentially, all I needed to know was the word brigade. Thank you, Dan.
Jenna, I haven't had a chance to hear from Alicia at all. Maybe she's got something she can say about what her idea.
But let me just get to, I mean, because we're actually, she knows why we're here tonight, because we met during, you know, she had a tour of our house. So can I get to my point, is that it was on hiatus. So we were working on this website, and then it kind of got derailed, and now we'd like to work with Alicia on it. So now she can say, now that I finished my thought, Stuart.
All right.
Thank you. No, I don't need to speak. I really appreciated the presentation, Dan, and I took some screenshots. I'm going to dive in and kind of catch up on what I missed. But thank you so much for presenting that data. But no, yeah, I'm very excited to be working with Dan and Jana on the water committee, and I appreciate you guys your patience with me today. I'm sorry if I took up time by being late because I completely did not have it on my calendar, but I'm not going to make excuses. I want to move forward. I know your mission is it's a hard one, it's important, and you don't want flighty people coming in and out, and I'd like to be more consistent and help you move forward. So thank you for your patience, and I do have a lot of the notes, and I am excited to move forward with the website and the greater reach outside of the bubble. We talked about that, and just really helping educate newcomers, but also people that have been here for a long time and might need their myths busted, like Dan likes to say. So I'm just happy to be along for the ride, and I respect the work that you guys have already done, and I humbly come in and just want to learn more. So that's where I'm at.
So we had a tour of my yard, and she brought her daughter Mackenzie, and Mackenzie has some skills that will be useful, and she's actually in high school. What year is she?
She's gonna be a junior in the fall at Catalina Foothills High School, and so she's gonna be doing some research, and she sees so much value in what you guys do as well. So it's exciting to be able to work on this with her, and also just there's so much to learn and catch up on too,
So Dan, did you find the picture? We wanted to show Alicia, since my tour went a little long, and then like Jeremy came out and kind of entertained us for a while, so we got to talking. So we didn't really go over any of the stuff about the website, and so we were hoping to show a little bit of the website. That Dan, have you found that?
Yeah, I'm actually looking right now. One of the things I realized, and sorry, I should have done this before the meeting tonight too, is that I haven't logged into the Desert Lifestyle Tucson domain in forever, and I don't know what the password is. But let's see if we have it on here somewhere. So
And while Dan is doing that, Stuart, while we have you around, so we're trying to decide, because obviously we worked on this with Hope for Tucson, which is now called Open Tucson, for a while, and as our own project. But we were trying to decide, if this should be a Sustainable Tucson project, what would be the benefits of it being a Sustainable Tucson project? Right now, we're paying for the domain for this. And I know there's been some challenges with Sustainable Tucson, even with your own website. But I do believe that as a not-for-profit, we could, if it was a Sustainable Tucson project, that we probably could get the domain for free. Can you think of any other reasons for this to be a Sustainable Tucson project, Stuart?
Can you just tell me a sentence or two, the mission and the method again?
Okay, so that's why Dan is supposed to be getting this up. But
Yep.
essentially, we want to make a really slick looking website that's kind of like a magazine, like I'm trying to think. There's other something Tucson. I'm just not even thinking the name of them. But there's other websites where they share about Tucson, and they're like often about for tourists, or things you can go to and stuff like that. But ours is just related to how have a sustainable life in Tucson. So it's all the values that Sustainable Tucson would have, and it's not just water, but water would be one of them. Of course, so that would have like articles, and that's what Mackenzie would might be writing some of. Of course, I've got years of blogs about what we've done in our yard about rainwater harvesting. Maybe Alicia will be doing some rainwater harvesting or something in her house, and maybe she could tell, her and her daughter could, tell that story as they put in new stuff, because ours has been in there for, 8 years, or some things from, Mackenzie's perception as a young woman on what we're doing. But we just all the things that make it look like a wonderful life to have a Sustainable Tucson. So like it's a glossy magazine kind of website, where are the best places to ride your bike? I'd actually had a college student that wrote it, but his article was kind of wonky even at the time. It's probably dated now, but his sounded like a college paper rather than, but like showing the different areas or the best to ride, stuff like that. Showing how to do showing how exciting it is to do rainwater harvesting, in your yard, showing some beautiful yards, that have a lot of, native plants and stuff like that, probably.
And having it be like a calendar events page where we do have like the fun events that are coming up that we can direct people to, and then also have other like Visit Tucson or different places direct people to our site as well if they want to learn more about the lifestyle that the sustainable lifestyle that we can bring to Tucson.
Right.
Nice.
So are you a sustainability realtor, Alicia?
I'm actually working on that designation. Yeah, that's something that I'm working on.
And so so that was another thing for sure that we discussed during the Renew Summit, is that would definitely could be an ongoing water committee project, you know, if other people wanted to work with us on that. We just lost Catherine, who's really good, you know, has a lot of knowledge because she goes to all the water events. So we just lost her. I don't know, like if we'll get new people like on board to work on this
What do you
project.
mean? Where did she go? Why did she leave?
She got over. She was like going to every single water thing and volunteering for watershed management groups, everything. She's in their annual report because she did so much for them that
Yeah.
I think she got burned out. And
It
now
happens. Yeah, it does happen. Yeah.
at
Thank
least
you
needs to
guys.
take a
Yeah.
break. But
Yeah.
anyway, you know, she came tonight, which is sweet because she's like the one that said, "Oh, we have so many important things to do." So what, Dan, what do you have there on the screen?
So I was just trying to find, these are some things that I had in the had from Code for Tucson. They're not the last things we did because we had some actual layouts that we had done on Canva, and we had some artwork, which I'll have to get access to the other domain to be able to show. But this was just kind of the structure of the page. So it was like, you know, the looking at what you can do in your yard or in your kitchen or in your home or in your neighborhood. And I think Jan already kind of mentioned that. We also did some things like, you know, anytime you work with someone who is doing web design, they like to have personas. So who are we designing this for? And so this was actually something that Kevin, I think, did, not Kevin Green, but a different Kevin did with us, which was like, you know, putting together these personas. I thought we had them completed anyway. So yeah, this isn't super useful. I do apologize for that.
Yeah, I
But
thought he was going to show us a link. You can't go to the link to the website, Dan?
the website is not live. The website has been dead for, that was actually, Kevin was hosting that website that he was showing for a little bit. It's been dead forever.
Oh,
So
no.
you were asking about the Sustainable Tucson website? Is that one of your questions?
No, this is the Desert Lifestyle Tucson site,
So
which was
yeah,
the one we were working on.
it had a look to it, and apparently some guy that was that went to the Code for Tucson meetings had the domain for it, where the example, and I liked what he had already, and apparently like he let that domain go. So I guess we're kind
Well, he
of
didn't let the he was hosting it, and he would have had to pay for the hosting, so he stopped hosting it. I mean, we still have the domain, but we don't have that website.
Have you seen what Rocky developed for our website?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're aware that that's coming.
Yep.
There's we have been we were so taken up with the summit, and then trying to keep up with everything else. Plus, as you know, one board member resigned for health reasons. Another board members having health reasons to resign. So we've really been at lesser capacity recently. However, there is a volunteer, a wonderful volunteer, who's getting Rocky's website up, and I think we're waiting for one of the board members to do one last step for her so she can make it live for everybody, and you know we can go. What's the word? We can have a going out party, a coming out party. So that that's on that website, but it sounds like you've got something, so you don't need a website. Is that right?
So yeah, I mean, I wanted to show like the look of it because, you know, Alicia hasn't seen it. I didn't realize that we couldn't show you guys that because he let that go. But yeah, it was just like,
it looks like some of it. This is probably the one that's running on GitHub. But I did get one that is live-ish. You can see not everything's working. Like the image, that illustration we had an illustration, it is not there.
well, that's not helpful.
But it does have the various parts like the in your yard. I don't know if this one is going to work. But yeah, this was
like
the frame
over.
for it. Yeah.
But this is so we had this, I can't remember. Do you remember the name of the guy that was the designer? So that was, you know, what he really like wanted us to have those different. Yep. What does that mean?
Dan, is there, so I'm still not clear. You have a website on which that stuff's going to go? Or are you looking for a website on which that stuff?
So we currently we own the domain for it. So yeah, the question was, you know, if we, you know, what are the benefits for doing it with Sustainable Tucson? I mean, are you guys paying for your website, or are you getting a free one for being a not-for-profit?
I think it's a little of both. Rocky got us on for a certain reduced amount, is the way I recall it.
Hmm.
So there's some payment, but not a lot.
But yeah, Dan is not really a designer. So like Alicia, if you know of anybody that wants to donate their time to help us with the design things, Dan, show them what you did for regeneration, the Tucson story.
Well, I don't think that that's fair, because actually the thing I did for regeneration, I was very much designing it as you wanted. There were things I would have done
It's not
different.
exactly how I wanted it, but but anyway, because I mean, so Dan.
Do you think, like, while you're building out what Rocky has for Sustainable Tucson, if we could meet with him to see if this is something as an extension that we could build out, like, with theirs?
Well, Rocky actually is female, and she is graduated. She's now in the sustainability office at UA. So Nancy Orr is our will be our webmaster for that site. And
Right.
it's what again are you thinking that she might do with you?
Alicia, can you clarify?
Just like to link the two so that it could be a landing page if it's through Sustain Tucson, but it's also like a build out for the water piece, like the and also this what you're doing here, like have it be a build out of the whole as a whole. Like if so they only have to go to one place if it were to be a subset of Sustainable Tucson.
So, for example, on that the Sustainable Tucson website about to be, there's a page that people that would refer people to the other page, or maybe I'm not the right person to talk to. I think you could talk to Nancy for sure.
Yeah.
I can say
Well,
yes to that.
I mean, we could. So I mean, I guess one of the questions, I don't think we really were necessarily looking to do that. I mean, we could host Desert Lifestyle Tucson on the Sustainable Tucson webpage as, you know, just another page that would be accessible, and it could be accessible either through Sustainable Tucson, or it could be directed from Desert Lifestyle Tucson, which we have that domain. We still own that domain. I don't know if there's an advantage to that or not. I don't even know if we want to go there. Yeah, this is the one she was talking about. I thought it was fine for what you asked for, but I mean, yeah,
Well,
would I have
mean,
chosen
like,
this
so
color
just
scheme
to
or
show
anything?
that
No.
Dan's not really. So I had this painting that I did with paint, regeneration, the Tucson story, and I wanted it to be a banner going across. And for some reason, Dan couldn't do that. And if you click, I don't know.
Yes, because the dimensions were
Why
wrong.
don't you click on one of the click on the yeah, you can see if you click on them, it goes to different pages. So it's really pretty simple. But the one that we had,
I don't know. I mean, how that is a question of how much. That was one of the things with the. I mean, yeah, you probably want something that's more of a catchy digest view for Desert Lifestyle Tucson, which would require some more work. And yeah, I mean, there are certainly web designers who probably maybe have some ideas about how they could be done. I mean, there's a lot we can do with it, actually. We were kind of stuck with doing it as a WordPress site, because the guy we were working with always worked in WordPress, and I actually kind of hate working in WordPress, to be honest. I know that the new web page for Sustainable Tucson is not WordPress, although I made that one in WordPress originally because I was told that's what you guys wanted to use. So yeah, the current Sustainable Tucson page is the one that I put together, And I only did it in WordPress because I was told, oh, yeah, we like WordPress. We understand it. And then everybody's like, we can't use WordPress. We want to use something else. So
So
Mm.
each of these blue ones are actually links to go
Links.
to
Yep.
the different ways. Because this is about my play Regeneration, the Tucson story, and it's all about educating people, like even high school students, about how to be sustainable in Tucson. So each of these things is a link to services to make your house sustainable, for instance. But you can see it's pretty simple and not very. I'm
Simple is
thinking
not always
like
bad, but
really colorful pictures. I had a
yeah.
great picture of like this
Mm.
one person's backyard that had that was so green and had great better than our yard. You saw our yard. You've both seen our yard, and better than our yard. It was just so green and lush, and was just so exciting to see that what you could do. If you do the rainwater harvesting, for instance, and like in the kit, like the part you can get off of this down now. In the part that said like in the kitchen, like that could be things about like zero waste and
Yeah.
you know um, you know of course composting and the different ways that you can be sustainable and make it like actually, I mean, I really enjoy our lifestyle, but I think a lot of people probably think it's kind of hard work to be sustainable. And certainly, like, we don't have a car. So, certainly, it's harder to get around without a car. But, even like how we have made our house sustainable, we put in energy efficient windows. There's probably people like on the team and, the energy team at Sustainable Tucson that could be good resources to us, because like I remember there was a presentation at Sustainable Tucson with Robert Bulachek where he said, you don't have to do it all at once, but as your appliances are breaking down, replace them with electric. So that kind
Stuart,
of thing.
are you trying to get permission to leave?
I'm so sorry, you guys. This is such important stuff, and I'm cooked, and I can't really offer anything more tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, anyway, so do you have an idea what it is, Stuart?
Yeah. Thank you, Alicia, for coming, and I hope you have a lot of fun with this work. And I'm sure we'll be in conversation. Feel free to reach out if you want to get in touch with Nancy or when you want to get in touch with her.
Thank you. Yeah, I think absolutely. That would be good. Thank you guys.